Member for Nedlands.
My grievance is to the Minister for Housing, and I thank the Minister for taking my grievance about an issue I know that we both share an interest in, that of social and community housing. I appreciate the Minister's innovative and responsive approach to addressing challenges of building the number and capacity of social housing options since taking the portfolio of housing and homelessness. As the Minister is aware, I've worked in community services for over 2 decades. I have seen the impact that social and community housing can have for people in providing stability, safety and security. Social housing can provide people the platform to engage in education, training, employment, treatment services and building community. It is the basis for health, wellbeing, social inclusion and connection. And most fundamentally, it is a human right that affords people dignity and offers them an adequate standard of living. If I can provide just one example of what social housing can do for someone's life, a story shared with permission. A friend and colleague of mine was in a violent relationship for many years with the instability and lack of safety that brings to all aspects of a woman's life. When her partner passed away, her housing needs changed as she was now a single mother to school-aged children. Since securing community housing, her children all successfully engaged in and completed schooling, with the youngest to graduate from their now local high school in a few years' time. She has gone on to attend university. A single parent in her 40s who had not completed high school will graduate with honours early next year. She attributes much of this to the stability and security of her community housing. It has removed a significant source of worry and concern and allowed her to put down roots and build a community. From this basis of security and safety, she's engaged in a tertiary education that will change her life. And given that she has chosen to study in the helping professions, will also change the lives of others. This education will allow her access to greater employment in a stable profession where there are multiple opportunities. It will improve her income and later her superannuation. Not only this, but it will also provide her the rewards of her own commitment, resilience and dedication, a sense of pride, identity and contribution. And because I know she's watching, I will take this opportunity to say how proud I am to call you my friend. These are the kinds of people who live in social housing, and these are the kinds of benefits that social housing provides for individuals, families and for us as a community. I note the Cook Labor government's investment of $2.6 billion in social housing and homelessness measures over 4 years. 1,300 social homes have been added to support Western Australians, with a further 1,100 social homes currently under contract or construction. Social housing makes up less than 4% of homes in WA, and of this approximately 83% is managed by state government and 17% by community housing providers. Community housing is owned by or under the legal control of a community housing organisation, usually a not-for-profit, who are highly skilled in matching people's needs to accommodation and supporting them to maintain that housing. Social housing works across a range of needs, including crisis, transitional and long-term housing. I commend the Minister's announcement last week that under new planning reforms, new social housing projects will be able to bypass local government to reduce barriers to entry. Community housing providers will be able to go direct to the Development Assessment Panel, noting that local governments in fact need to step up and play a role in cutting red tape to boost housing supply across the state. Unfortunately, the announcements have attracted criticism from some local governments, including mine. However, disturbingly, the criticisms have not been about the policy itself, but rather judgment and stereotyping of the types of people who live in social housing. According to one City of Perth councillor, the reason councils say no to social and community housing is that people are scared of the tenants. They later doubled down on these comments on this stereotyping and fear-mongering by writing to a local paper that social housing brings noise complaints, litter and apparently even declining property values. Let's consider, however, the range of social housing provided to people in our community. They are people living with a disability, they are carers, they are single parents who are provided the opportunity to have their children complete schooling in a local community. They are our seniors and elderly community members. They are young care leavers who are given service support to access accommodation and build their independent living skills. They are people on low incomes who cannot access the rental market or purchase a property. They are people worthy of our compassion and understanding. They are people worthy to be our neighbours. They are people worthy of being members of our community. Everybody has the right to housing. As this councillor represents part of my electorate, it is deeply disappointing and I have to say personally upsetting to see my community and its residents, including me and my family, portrayed as a community who are not empathetic or inclusive. Yet my electorate is home to many highly reputable and engaged community housing services, including RUA, Foundation Housing and the Third Place. In fact, the Third Place just last week held a highly successful fundraising event with many local Subiaco businesses donating to support it. Demonstrating how local governments can be inclusive and engaging in its role in community housing, the City of Subiaco recently signed a partnership agreement with the Wandana Community Association to provide a community garden, a fortnightly morning tea for residents and a native garden project. The Mayor of Subiaco noted in his speech the importance of such partnerships like that with Wandana to the diverse communities that make up the fabric of the City of Subiaco and facilitate spaces to learn, connect and flourish. I seek, therefore, from the Minister today an acknowledgement that social and community housing are a priority of the WA Government, a recognition that our government's social housing policies will continue to be inclusive and consider how we can best develop capacity and volume in housing opportunities, an understanding of the positive ways local government can contribute to successful social housing outcomes. And finally, I would like to extend an invitation to the Minister to visit my electorate and meet with key community housing stakeholders to witness the excellent and compassionate work that is happening in this space in my community.
Minister for Housing and Homelessness.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I thank the member, for her commitment to providing housing for the most vulnerable in Western Australia. I know that the member for Nedlands reflects her community, and while I might not always agree on all aspects, for example regarding density, and with some members of your community, I think it's fair to say that the Nedlands community, from my experience and the way that they do engage with the existing community and social housing in the electorate, that there is a genuine understanding and empathy for ensuring that we have housing for all. We are, and as you've said, making huge investments of $2.6 billion over 4 years, 4,000 home target, delivered nearly 1,500 to date, to integrate social housing across Western Australia. Now, as I've said in the last grievance, National Cabinet this week endorsed a framework and principles to drive more housing via planning reform. And that included encouraging, facilitating reforms to support the rapid delivery of social and affordable housing, and also promote medium and high density housing in well located areas close to existing public transport connections, amenities and employment, and undertaking planning, zoning, land release and other reforms such as increasing density to meet the share of housing supply targets. So there is a huge push in every state to drive planning reform to accelerate the delivery of all housing, but in particular social and community. So I'm deeply proud that I'm building on the planning reforms, that we also announced a streamlined approval process for community housing that you referred to. And the idea is simple, that it is a measure of cutting red tape, that regardless of the size or value of the project, community housing providers can opt to go to the DAP system. So there's choice, they can still go to a council, but it might be just a couple of dwellings, doesn't reach the threshold of the DAP system currently as set, but it can opt to go to the DAP system. Could be 4 dwellings, 5 dwellings. So this really is just another way to provide a streamlined approach. And I note that it has been welcomed by the community housing sector. Now, you have referred to comments in response, particularly one councillor, and I'll name him as Councillor Brett Fleeton, who, and I think you've already referred to the comments, but in effect, and I think in summary said, social housing gets knocked back because people fear residents. Now, I think this is disappointing, and I think this is sad, because ultimately we need to show compassion, empathy for people who are doing it tough. I've always said this, that anyone can experience homelessness, that a loss of a job, falling behind in mortgage payments. There could be many different things, circumstances in your life that you never imagine. So social housing and community housing are tenants, they're real people. They're not something to be mocked. They're not something to simply put down. And I just think it is really easy to get on Twitter or social media and make glib remarks that actually just perpetuate stigma about social and community housing. And I note, unfortunately, this is not the first time Councillor Fleeton has done this. And I note that he's now deleted it, but he actually posted a picture of a homeless person sleeping in Sydney, 10:30 p.m. on Sydney's busiest CBD street, and posted a photo of it. I assume to make some political point or comparative point. Again, I just find this very sad, that a local councillor would feel compelled to take a photo of someone doing it really tough on a street, regardless of what point you're trying to make, and put that on Twitter. What's the point of it? You know, ultimately, what are you trying to do? I think we're all better than that. I think we're all better, whatever side of politics you're on, we're better than stigmatising or mocking or whatever else people who are doing it rough. Now, I understand there are complexities with social housing management. I've never shied away from that. I understand, and that's why we're working to integrate social housing across communities. But certainly something, as the Minister for Social Housing, I want to be very clear that we will always champion the social housing and public housing, that it provides a critical safety net for people in Western Australia, and that we need to integrate it across all communities. And that is already demonstrated in the community in Nedlands, that contrary to some of the opinions, that they are embraced, that they are part of our community.